Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Garrison, and I'm an alcoholic. It's through the grace of God and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous that I've been sober since May 30th, 1982, and I just had a birthday last week for 13 years, and I was real glad to have that happen, I can tell you. And I want to congratulate the birthday people tonight and the chip people and stuff, and it just brought to my mind that the greatest birthday of all is tomorrow. Alcoholics Anonymous is 60 years old tomorrow, and June 10th, 1935, we came about, and I'll tell you what, I am truly grateful for that. I'd be dead if it wasn't for that, I can tell you that. My home group is the Pacific Group in West LA, a group I'm very, very proud to be a member, just as I'm sure you're proud to be a member of yours. And I want to thank Mike for inviting me to come out and share my life with you tonight. This is an honor and a privilege. It's one that I do not take lightly, I'll guarantee you. You guys, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I really do. And I think that it shows. And I make an awful lot of mistakes, and I do an awful lot of things wrong. But I'll tell you one thing, that I love you. Make no mistake about that. If you're new in this room tonight, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope you get a sponsor and a book and do what we do around here. You're going to stay sober as I've stayed sober for 13 years. And people like me cannot stay sober, I can guarantee you. My sponsor, Clancy, sends you his love and very best wishes tonight. And if anybody in this room is wondering why I have a man for a sponsor and why I have Clancy for a sponsor, it's really quite simple. I didn't get sober in California. I got sober in a place called Lincoln, Nebraska, which is just a goddamn terrible place to get sober, let me tell you. Although we are the #1 football team in the nation, I will point that out. But and I wasn't doing well in Alcoholics Anonymous in Lincoln, Nebraska. I went through 19 sponsors at a rapid clip, and I'm certainly not proud of it as I stand here tonight. And thank God for the old timers in AA, because somebody loved me enough to get me my current sponsor. And I got to tell you that my life has done nothing but totally, completely turn around as a result of it. And I talked to him this morning before he left town, and he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Going over to Playa, Westchester, and speak." And he said, "Well, get up there and share your experience, your strength, and your hope, and tell those people what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. Ignore the old timers. They don't need your inspiration, my dear. And talk directly to those new people who are the life and blood of AA." And I believe as I stand here tonight, and I welcome you, and I hope that you stay in. Then I think I did, without a doubt, the most important thing I can ever do, and that's to say, "God, please help me say what you want me to say to these people." God is very much a part of my life tonight, you guys. It did not used to be that way for me, I can guarantee you. I come from an alcoholic hell. I cannot even describe it. It was so bad. And, my life is real good today, and sometimes I forget how bad it was. And I can tell you the day I got sober, I weighed 95 pounds. I was the color of squash. I had an alcoholic hepatitis. I had a liver cirrhosis. I had ruptured esophageal varices. And if you don't know what that stuff is, you don't want to know it, because you die from that kind of stuff. And I was standing on Skid Row in Lincoln, Nebraska, sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And if you guys haven't drank Mad Dog, I need to tell you, it's not one of your finer wines, I can tell you that. I'll guarantee you one thing, that crap has never seen a great, make no mistake about that. And I literally could not believe what was going on in my life. I'd lost my children, I lost my husband twice, although I didn't really care about that, I want you to know. I'd lost my car, I'd lost my house, I'd destroyed every relationship I'd ever had with anybody, and I was clearly dying from alcoholism. And then I lost the one thing that brought me my knees in this disease. I lost my nursing license. And you guys, I love my profession, and that absolutely devastated me, but did not stop me from drinking. And there's a reason for that, and it was read here tonight, that I have an obsession that somehow, someday, I will learn to control and enjoy my drinking. The persistent illusion is astonishing. Many of us proceed in the gates of insanity and death. And I'll guarantee you one thing, is I was in the gates of insanity the day I got sober, and almost into my coffin. And I'm most grateful to be standing here 13 years sober tonight, because I really should be dead. And you guys, it didn't start out my life with me standing on Skid Row, I got to tell you. I come from a lovely, lovely home in Nebraska, and I want you to know that, and my mother wanted you to know it too, I'll guarantee you that. I had a beautiful, sophisticated, elegant mother that died a year ago in March, and I miss my mom very, very much, you guys. I had no idea how much I loved that woman until she died. And I mean, I knew I loved her, but I had no idea how much. And my mom was always so proud her daughter was 10 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous when she died. And although my mom did not believe I was an alcoholic, the day she died, she didn't believe it. She thought I was having a few problems, and I sure as hell was, I can tell you that. But anyway, I miss her terribly and stuff. I come from an alcoholic home, and I don't think that's neither here nor there. I don't do well with people that stand AA any podiums and blame anybody for anything. And my dad was an alcoholic, you guys, and I loved my father very, very much. And my dad died from this disease on the streets of Chicago in 1979. And you tell me how a Major in the Air Force dies on Skid Row. I don't know if that happened, and the fact that he was an alcoholic. And whether or not he ever found AA or not, I do not know. I just know that he certainly did not stay sober as a result of it. And, you know, one more time tonight, this is a cunning, baffling, powerful disease that kills people. This is not a game I'm playing up here. This is serious business. I would give anything in the world if my father were alive tonight, because we'd have one hell of a lot to talk about, I can tell you. I have a sister who was Miss Rah-Rah in high school and homecoming queen and cheerleader and all that kind of crap, and made straight A's and never cracked a book, and I made straight F's and never cracked a book, and that was the difference. My sister was a beautiful little girl. She's a gorgeous woman today. She looks nothing like I do, I got to tell you. And she was a model for many, many years for Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas, and retired here recently. Now she's teaching school in the West Indies. And I got to tell you that as a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous, I love my sister very, very much today. And I recently found out something about her. She's also very beautiful on the inside, too, and I never used to know that. I have a brother who's a pilot in the Navy over in Spain who got home from Operation Desert Storm not too long ago, who was in that first attack over there. And I am so grateful that war is over. You have no idea. Neither one of these people are alcoholic. I have another sister who's married to the public defender in Lincoln, Nebraska, who got me out of one hell of a bunch of trouble when I got sober, and I'm welcome in their homes today, and I never used to be. I come from basically a very boring family, if you want to know the truth. They're highly successful people, and they bore me to tears, I got to tell you guys. And I have a couple kids who are 33 and 34 years old, and I know I certainly look old enough to have kids that age, but by God, I sure am. And this is where it really starts getting interesting for me. These kids are anything but boring, I got to tell you guys. As a matter of fact, they're a couple of jerks, if you want to know the truth. And, you know, I love my kids very, very much. Please don't get me wrong, but they are indeed a couple of jerks. And my oldest son's an alcoholic, and I know our book says we don't call the people an alcoholic, but I'll call him one if I want to, because he is one. And he got picked up for his number 9th drunk driving charge last March, and one more time he's gotten out of it. It never ceases to amaze me, the crap that we get away with, and I know I'm the last person in the world that can help that kid. I can just be an example to him and keep my mouth shut, and that's what I try and do. I have another son who up until about 3 months ago, or 2 months ago, I did not believe had a problem with alcohol or drugs, and I was back in Lincoln sharing at a convention I started about 10 years ago, and they asked me to be their Sunday morning speaker, and you know, and I thought, well, I'm not going to tell my kids that I'm in town. I'm just going to surprise them. Don't ever do that, you guys. Don't ever tell your kids you're not coming. And I walked into my oldest son's home, and about 11 o'clock at night, my youngest son was there, and he had sunglasses on at 11 o'clock at night, and I thought, Jeff, what are you doing with sunglasses on this late at night? And for some reason, I found this kid sobbing in my lap, you guys, and he got real involved with crystal meth and stuff, and he was just a nightmare, let me tell you. And I'm happy to report that my son is, let's see, almost 2 months sober, Narcotics Anonymous in Lincoln, Nebraska, for which I'm truly, truly grateful. And one more time, I had to make a phone call to Los Angeles and talk to my sponsor. And I don't know how to stay out of my kids' business, you guys. I really don't. And I know how important that is. And I talked to my sponsor, and he said, just give him a phone number and back off. Well, that's real hard for me to do, but that's exactly what I did. And he's doing real good, I guess probably because I stayed out of it. I don't know. But anyway, I'm truly grateful that as I stand here tonight. And anyway, this goofy son of mine, this younger one of mine, surprised me about 8 years ago with a 4-year-old granddaughter I knew nothing about. And he called me one day from Nebraska, and he said, Mom, you know, I'm getting married tomorrow. And I thought, getting married tomorrow? It was a surprise to me that anybody would even have him, if you want to know the truth. And I said, Jeff, why do you call me the day before the wedding? Expect me to be back in Nebraska. I said, the Pope's in Los Angeles. I doubt if I can get a flight out of here. And he said, Mom, I don't expect you to come. It's just going to be a tiny little wedding. Don't worry about coming. Well, you know, you don't tell people like me that stuff. I wanted to be there, and I was right about that. I couldn't get a flight out of L.A. The planes were just jammed and stuff, and I was just in a twit. You have no idea. And I talked to my sponsor about it, and he said, well, you know, what are you going to do? Walk? If you can't go, you can't go. Now shut up about it, you know. And I did. And I talked to my mom the day after the wedding, and I said, Mom, how'd the wedding go? And she said, it was very lovely, but who was that little girl with them? And I said, what little girl? And she said, well, apparently Jeff's got a 4-year-old daughter that you don't know anything about, and I suggest you call your son and talk to him about it. And I need to tell you guys that I was more than happy to do that. Make no mistake about that. And I called Nebraska, and I said, Jeff, how'd the wedding go? And he said, it was very nice, Mom. And I said, who was that little girl with you guys? And he said, Mom, that's my daughter. And I said, why didn't you tell me that I had a grandbaby? I was so upset with him. Not because I had a grandbaby, because I didn't know about it. And he said, Mom, I was afraid you'd get drunk. And I thought, get drunk? I wouldn't have gotten drunk. At least I don't think I would have. And I was on the first thing smoking out of Los Angeles, get home and meet my little granddaughter. And I got to tell you guys that this child is the icing on the cake. She's the apple of my eye. Her name is Brandy, and doesn't that just figure? You know, and she walked up to me at the airport, and she said, are you my grandma? And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, well, you're my favorite grandma. And see, that's what I want to hear. That's the stuff I strive for. And I said, Brandy, why do you say that? You don't even know me. She said, because you wear ribbons in your hair and grandmas don't wear ribbons in their hair. And I thought, well, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but I'll take whatever I can get here. And I flew her out to California a few years ago to give me a cake at one of my AA birthdays, our Saturday night meeting, and she flew out from Nebraska by herself, and I thought she'd be terrified to be on that airplane by herself, but I was wrong about that. She got off that plane like she owned it after sitting in the cockpit of the pilot the whole trip, and I knew I was going to be in bad trouble because this little girl never shuts her mouth for 2 minutes, you guys, and I'm not used to being around little kids, and they drive me crazy real quick. And I said, Brandy, do you ever be quiet? You're giving me a headache. And she said, Grandma, I have a lot to say, and if you don't like it, take some aspirin, is what she said to me. I think that we have a prospective member of AA on our hands, or I hope I'm wrong about that. I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska 4 years ago in January. I looked at my second grandchild, a beautiful baby boy that was born to my son and his wife. And I got to tell you guys that tears of gratitude were down my cheeks because I should not have been standing there. And I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska 3 years ago in January. I looked at my third grandbaby, another beautiful baby boy that was born to my son and his wife, and one more time the tears were rolling. And I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska 2 years ago in January. And I looked at my fourth grandchild, another beautiful baby boy that was born to that alcoholic son of mine and his wife, and one more time the tears were rolling. Things with my family are very, very good today. It is only a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can assure you, and it took a long time for it to happen. And in my case, that's a good thing, I got to tell you guys. You know, when I was growing up, I was a disruptive jerk is what I was. Always in trouble, always getting kicked out of classrooms. I hated discipline. I was very, very rebellious. I literally hated people telling me what to do, and I like it even less today, if you want to know the truth. And, you know, I never felt like I belonged anywhere, and I hear that a lot from AA podiums, and I'm right on with that 125%, I got to tell you guys. You know, I really don't remember my first drink, you guys, but I can tell you that I hope to God I never forget my last one, and I hope it was my last one. But I remember what alcohol did for me from the very beginning. It made me feel like I belonged, and I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do. I drank at any given opportunity after that, and I was probably about 13 years old. You know, I realize that I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I honor your podium with that. You know, but I got to tell you that I did a lot of drugs too. I need to make that a small part of my story. It's impossible for me to tell my story without talking about this and stuff. And you know, and when I was growing up in Nebraska, there just wasn't a lot of drugs on the street. But I'll guarantee I found every single one of those drugs. And you know, there was some marijuana and speed and stuff. And today, if you get caught for possession of marijuana, you get a ticket, big deal. When I was growing up, you went to prison is what happened to you. And that didn't scare me. Nothing scared me. Everything I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I'm one of these alcoholic females, and I hate to say this from an AA podium, but it's precisely the way that it was for me, and we're supposed to tell the truth up here, that if you pat me on the head, my pants fall off is what happens to me. And I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was growing up. I absolutely love men. I love everything about them. You name it about them, I love it about them. They've been the downfall of my entire existence, and they remain the same today, I'm sorry to say. And I particularly like sick men. There's a room full of them here tonight. I can just feel it, you know. That's one thing I love about Southern California. It's got so many sick men, and I'm just entertained around the clock 24 hours a day. And I'm getting the age now, girls with silver-haired men are starting to become very attractive to me, which opens up a whole new ball game, I got to tell you. Those young ones are nice, but sooner you got to talk to them, girls, and they ain't got nothing to say I want to hear. And I'm sure that I have nothing to say they want to hear either. But I got to tell you guys a funny story. I was in Nashville, Tennessee a couple years ago giving a talk, and one of the fine ladies of Nashville, Tennessee walked up to me afterwards, I want you to know, and she says to me, she says, "You're disgusting." And she wasn't kidding, you guys. She meant every word of it. And I said, "Lady, from where I come from, being disgusting is a step up, I got to tell you. And furthermore, if I wanted you to sponsor me, I'd flown to Nashville and asked you." You know, I hear some women get this podium, and I wonder if they ever drank, you guys. I really do. I wonder if they do all their drinking in one room and somebody didn't shoot it to into the keyhole with an eyedropper. You know, I was out there big time. I got myself into a lot of trouble. I've been taught to share that freely in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if I offend anybody in this room tonight, I would never offend anybody in the program that saved my life. And besides that, my book tells me, and this is my favorite part of the big book, it says, "Cling to the thought that in God's hands, your dark past will be the greatest possession that you have." And then it goes on to say, because you can literally divert death and misery for others. And I found that to be very, very true in my sobriety. And if I offend anybody in this room tonight, I don't want to hear about it afterwards either. But anyway, you know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says clearly that we're to tell in the general way what our drinking was like. And you're going to get the general idea real quick about what my drinking was like. You know, I can tell you about my drinking in about 5 seconds flat if you want to know the truth. About 25 years ago, I was at a little concert in upstate New York called Woodstock. And that's exactly what my drinking was like. It was all about Woodstock, I got to tell you. And I was up there with a medical team of people from the Midwest. You're supposed to be working is what you're supposed to be doing. And I got to tell you, I did not work 1 minute the whole entire week. And they hired about 10 nurses from the Midwest to cover this concert and stuff. And we were a seedy lot, let me tell you guys. And I was the first one to sign up for it. I found 9 other alcoholics to join me. And we met about 80 residents from the East Coast. And we were supposed to be working the whole week. And, you know, and I'll tell you, I will never forget forget that concert as long as I live, although I really don't remember much about it, I can tell you that. But I do remember standing in front of the stage the night that Richie Havens sang Freedom, and Joe Cocker and Country Joe and Santana, all those groups that I love. I come from the roaring 60s, you guys, and I love rock and roll, let me tell you. And I still love it today, if you want to know the truth. And I loved Elvis Presley, and Janis Joplin was my lady, let me tell you. And wouldn't Janis Joplin have been a fine member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys? I would have hung out with her, let me tell you. And I had the honor of handing her a fifth of vodka on stage in Kansas City, Missouri one time, and in retrospect, I don't see it as much of an honor. The woman died from alcoholism and drug abuse, but anyway, you know, drinking for me at one time was a fun thing, you guys. If you alive me, stand for the night and say anything but that. But I cannot remember the fun. I have to remember the pain that it caused me. It almost cost me my life. And like I said earlier, I'm truly grateful standing here 13 years sober. And, you know, like I said, in the book, it tells us to tell in a general way what our drinking was like. And, you know, I love the horse races. I love everything I'm not supposed to be doing. And I've been to horse races in Omaha, Nebraska with a couple nurses that I worked with. And the girls told me, they said, Karen, the horse race has been over with for 3 hours. We're all drunk. Let's go back to Lincoln. And I said, well, run along. I'd met 2 guys from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and these guys wanted to take me to a party, and by God, I was going. Like I said, you pat me on the head, and I'll follow you anywhere you want to go. And I really can't tell you much about this party, nor the guys that I was with. I just know that I woke up out of a blackout on Highway 2 by Playa, Nebraska, a little bitty town of about 200 people. And I found out something very interesting out about Playa, Nebraska, that they take a dim view of naked women walking on their highways. I found that out. And there I was at 2 o'clock in the morning, walking stark naked down the highway, my high heels carrying my purse, and it was February in Nebraska, and it's a tad bit nippy out there in February, Nebraska. Tonight I know why ducks' feathers freeze, I can tell you that. And of all the luck, the first person I ran into was a state highway patrolman, and I thought to myself, my God, what am I going to do? Or what do? You walk is what you do. And he rolled down his window, he turns on his siren, he looked at me, and he said, what are you doing? And I thought, well, this is about the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It's quite obvious what I was doing. And he said, lady, you get in this squad car and you sit down and don't you touch me. Well, you know, one thing about a person like myself, every time I'm in trouble, I'll do one thing more to make it worse every single time. And I looked at this cop and I said, I'm not getting in your squad car because you might try and rape me. He said, lady, I wouldn't bet any money on it. You're absolutely disgusting is what you are. And I'm here to tell you guys that that made me madder. Anything that was going on to show you how sick I was. And to make a long story short, he had to get a matron out from Playa, Nebraska City Jail to come out there and get me. And that woman was not pleased, I will guarantee you. They were very busy at that downtown jail, not have time for this foolishness. And I went downtown, booked for indecent exposure, for assault and battery, for kicking in his windshield, for hitting her, for hitting him, all the delightful antics that we pull as practicing alcoholics. And I will never forget how humiliating it was to be in that courtroom the very next morning when my brother-in-law, the public defender in Lincoln, who was working in Palmyra that day, and I didn't know he was there, came walking up to me. And he said, Karen, have you lost your marbles or what? Why would you do something like this? And you guys, I looked at my brother-in-law, and I was to say this to many, many people in my drinking career in many, many courtrooms. I said, oh, for Christ's sakes, Dennis, this could happen to anybody. You know, and we all know better than that. You know, that cost me about $3,000 to be out there, and I just shirked it off like it was no big deal. If you're going to drink, these things are going to happen occasionally, so what, you know. I will never forget what it felt like to wake up in the very hospital that I worked at in the operating room there. One more time coming out of a blackout. One more time I've been to horse races. You know, for a number of years I thought the horse races were my problem. It certainly was not my drinking. And I'm one of these alcoholic females. I have a big mouth when I drink, and I have a big mouth in sobriety, but I can tell you that pain is the teacher here. It's getting a lot better. And I'd smart off some guy at that horse race track, and he belted me right in the teeth is what he did. And a plastic surgeon was standing over me putting 18 stitches in my mouth. And I'll never forget what this doctor said to me. You guys, as long as I live, I'll never forget this. He said, Karen, we love you so much. What is wrong with you? You are such a good nurse and stuff. We think you're an alcoholic. Let's send you to a treatment center and get this drinking problem taken care of so you can get on with your life here. And you guys, I could not believe the audacity that man had that he would say that to me. And I said, just fix my lip and get the hell in my face. I'll drink if I want to drink. And that's exactly what I did. And the drunk driving charges and the bad checks, all the stuff that we do. I forgot to tell you part of my story here. I was so busy entertaining myself up here. I got pregnant when I was 16 years old, and I had to get married. And as it must be, I married an alcoholic, not most alcoholic women. And you know, we were totally unable to be in that marriage together, I got to tell you guys. And he was 17, I was 16. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't take care of a baby, nor did I want to take care of a baby. And before we knew it, we had 2 babies to take care of. And I quick found out what caused all that, and I put a halt to to it, I'll guarantee you that. And that caused me a lot of trouble throughout the years. And I married an individual that refused to work and used to come home and beat the hell out of me on a daily basis. And I had never seen a man and a woman before in my life, you guys. I'll guarantee you one thing. If my father would have ever laid one hand on my mom, she'd have knocked him from here to the moon, I got to tell you. And I grew to hate this guy very, very much. And somebody in that family had to get a job. And I found a job as a nurse's aide at a hospital there in Lincoln. And I literally fell in love with nursing. And I made a plan to myself. I would love to go to school, and I'd love to become a registered nurse. That's what I would love to do. They say that alcoholics don't have willpower. And I'm here to tell you tonight from this podium that that is a bunch of crap. I have more willpower than 20 elephants. When I want to do well, I'm going to do well. I don't have any willpower as far as my disease goes, but when I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And I went back, I finished junior high, I finished high school, I went to college full-time for 3 years, and I worked full-time for 3 years. And I'm talking about 18, 20 hours a day, you guys, and that is hard stuff to do. And at the age of 27 years old, I became a registered nurse. And if you think I'm proud to stand here tonight and tell you that I got jerked in front of the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska, and they told me, you are a disgrace to your profession, you're a disgrace to nursing, you're a disgrace to medicine, you're no longer working because we just jerked your nursing license. If you think I'm proud of that, you are sadly wrong. You guys, I love my profession, and I really, really mean that. And I would never do anything to jeopardize the people that I take care of and the people that I work with under ordinary circumstances. And what I had to tell you now is a story about how I threw it right down the toilet so I could drink. And that is total insanity. It's also called alcoholism. At the age of 27 years old, I went to work in surgery at the hospital there in Nebraska, and I had that job for 19 years. I love working in the operating room. I love taking care of those patients. It's a colorful, exciting nursing position, and I drank and ran with medical people mostly. They were colorful, intense people. They worked hard, and they played hard. And I need to tell you that the incidence of alcoholism amongst the medical profession is tremendously high, and that'll do a lot for your security level if you're going to have surgery next week. But it has to be very, very true. And those people are so grateful that I'm sober that they can't see straight. And I'm talking about alcoholics is what I'm talking about. But anyway, I got out of nurses training, you guys, and I divorced this man, and a whole new world opened up to me, and it's called men and alcohol. And I went absolutely hog wild is what I did. I was engaged 8 times during that divorce. I never did marry these people. 2 of them died from alcoholism, for Christ's sakes. I don't know anything about social drinking. I drank and ran with alcoholics, and we do indeed die from this. And I told you a couple of my real quick stories here, and I was getting in all kinds of trouble at the horse races, let me tell you, and the drunk driving charges and the bad checks and all the stuff that we do, and my kids were in trouble, and I thought to myself, I need to get married to my ex-husband again. That's what I need to do. The kids need their father. Besides, I need to get even with him for all the things that he's done to me. And those are not very good reasons to get married again, and I'm not particularly proud of that as I stand here tonight. And, if anybody in this room is thinking about getting married to the same person twice, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. The only way I can describe it is like taking a bite out of the same turd twice, if you will. And I'm sure he feels the same way I do. As a matter of fact, I know he does. Excuse me. I danced that man through 3 of the most miserable years of his life on the face of this earth. And one of your wonderful members of this group, Faith, asked me to tell this story tonight, and I'd never tell it if she hadn't asked me to. But anyway, I married this guy again, and like I said, I danced him through 3 miserable years, I got to tell you. And I was lying. I love to tell this story, and I tell it at any given opportunity. And my sponsor always tells me that is not funny, and you should not be telling that from AA podiums. And I always say, okay, Clancy, I won't tell it anymore. And he said, no, go ahead and tell it. Those people see how sick you really were, and apparently how sick you really still are. And I'm still sick, and I still think it's funny, and I'm telling the story. When I married him again, I told him, I said, if you ever hit me again, buddy, I'm going to kill you the next time you hit me. And he said, I'll never hit you again ever. And I said, you better see that you don't. And he lied is what he did. And he came home drunk one night, and I happened to be sober this night for some reason, and I'll never know why, because I usually wasn't. And girls, you know what guys do when they come home drunk. They want to take you to bed and stuff, and I was not buying it. If there's anything I can't stand, it's some drunk man mauling me when I'm sober. And I will say that when the shoe's under the foot, though, it's fine with me. And this guy came home and indicated that to me, and I said, you get your hands off me and leave me alone. I wanted nothing to do with him, period. And he broke my arm is what he did. And I'm here to tell you guys that I was pissed. Make no mistake about that. As a matter of fact, I'm still pissed about it, if you want to know the truth. And I told him, I said, you go to sleep on that couch, and so help me God, when you wake up, you're going to wish you'd never been born. And he sat up for hours, you guys, his eyes pried open. And as it must be, he finally passed out. And I started drinking martinis, and this is a classic example of what alcohol did for me. Alcohol told me what to do. I didn't tell it what to do. And I had about 8-10 martinis, and I was feeling no pain, I got to tell you. And I was sitting there on the couch watching this guy. And I hate to tell you what this man was doing, but I can't tell you the story unless I tell you what he was doing. He was laying on the couch playing with himself. And I thought, you disgusting man, you make me sick to my stomach. And the more I drank, the madder I got. And you guys, you know, I'm a nurse and I'm very familiar with male anatomy. And I'd be very familiar with male anatomy if I wasn't a nurse, you know. But anyway, I thought to myself, what can I do to get even with this guy for all the things that he's done to me? And I came up with this brilliant idea in my drunken stupor. This is one thing that we should never do, is drink and think at the same time, I got to tell you. And this is about 20 years ago, you guys, when superglue first came out. And superglue was powerful. Mrs. Bobbitt has nothing on me, let me tell you. I was informed before she ever got started, and I knew that stuff worked very, very well because my kids were plastering the house that wasn't moving. And I got that superglue out, and I read the directions on that superglue. And like I said, I was drunk and I wasn't seeing very clearly. And what I thought those directions said were, if this hits human skin, you better off within 15 hours. Now, why would it say something stupid like that? What it says, when, in fact, if this hits human skin, you'd off within 5 minutes is what it said. And I went over to this guy and I poured super glue all over this guy's groin, and I mean, and I mean everywhere. There was not one place in this man that did not have super glue. And I laughed about it and I went to bed. And I woke up in the morning to screams of horror like you cannot even believe. And, you know, I did not mean to hurt this guy as bad as I did, and I swear to God that's true. But I'll tell you what happened to my ex-husband. He never had the advantage of being circumcised when he was born, and now he clearly was, I can tell you that. And we had a telephone by our bedroom there in Lincoln. He called the police, and the cops were out in front of our home with their sirens going. There was an ambulance out there. The neighbors were gawking out of their windows. And, you know, one thing you guys got to keep in mind here, they don't see things like this happen in Nebraska. In California, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, but it's certainly not there. And the cops were laughing, which led me to believe the whole thing was funny. And they said, lady, are you crazy or what? Why would you do something like this? And you guys, I looked at those cops and I said, what makes you think that I did it anyway? I was only standing there with glue on my hands, for Christ's sakes. And they said, you're under arrest for assault and battery. And I said, you can't arrest wives in Nebraska for assault and battery against their husbands. I knew better than that. And 2 days later, when I got out of jail, I guess I didn't know better than that. And they took that man to the very hospital that I worked at in surgery, and he had to have surgery. And one more time, the whole staff saw what Karen did. And they took me to jail, I might add. And it turned out to be a terrible, terrible thing. Those doctors there in Lincoln couldn't get that glue off. And they did get 2 surgeons down from Creighton University Medical School in Omaha, Nebraska to get that glue off. And there's a paper written about that at Creighton. And if anybody in this room's thinking about going to medical school, or you can read about it if you want to. I'd always wanted a paper written about it, but not like this, I got to tell you. And I was sitting in that jail thinking to myself, I am getting the hell out of this marriage. Because when this guy comes home from the hospital, he's going to glue something to mine shut. And he would have, too, I got to tell you. God only knows I couldn't have that happen.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
You know, I divorced that man one more time, and I will tell you guys on the brighter side of things here tonight, that Alcoholics Anonymous really does work, because we have an amends step in this program, and my sponsor made me get on an airplane and fly to Sacramento, California, and make amends to my ex-husband, where he currently is with his new wife and stuff. And I tried to tell Clancy I'm not sorry that I did that, therefore I don't have to make the amends. He said, I don't give a damn whether you're sorry or not. Get in that airplane and get there and do what I'm asking you to do, and maybe one of these days you will be sorry. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room tonight that that guy kind of backs up when he sees me, I got to tell you. But we were able to sit down and talk and stuff. I made my amends to that guy. And I can tell you guys that I walked away from that man. I was free of what I had done to him. I was free of being married to him twice. And I can tell you the promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous started coming true in my life when I made those amends. So I know that this thing works. You just got to do it for it to work. And I want to also tell you what's happened recently in my life with this whole business of making amends. You know, there's no greater power in Alcoholics Anonymous than power of example, I got to tell you. And apparently I was the only example he even knew of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my ex-husband, I need to explain to you guys, are still very much in love with each other. But I will guarantee you one thing, there will not be a third time for me. And we are totally incompatible. We just do not get along. But we still very much care for each other. And we have no contact with each other, period, unless something happens to one of the kids and stuff. And he called me about a year ago last April, and he said, Karen, I am in trouble with drugs and alcohol. I cannot quit drinking and using drugs. What do I do? And you guys, I almost fell off my chair, let me tell you. I'd be the last person he'd ever ask anything. And you know, I wanted to real quickly go to Sacramento and get him to an AA meeting, all that kind of stuff. And AA kicked in for me big time, and I found myself saying to this guy, why don't you call Sacramento AA, Denny? That's what you need to do. And I gave him 2 phone numbers of some of the finest people I know in Alcoholics Anonymous that there. And apparently that's just what he did. And I didn't hear any more about it and stuff. And so, let's see, when was this? Last October he called, no, last May. Yeah, he was like 2 months sober. Last May, I got a dozen red roses from this guy on my AA birthday, and this is what the card said, you guys, and nobody but AA members write this stuff on cards. It said, happy AA 12th birthday. And I thought, how weird, he must be sober in AA. And I called my sponsor and I said, what should I do about this? And he said, you stay away from him. He is a newcomer. The last thing in the world he needs is you back in his life. Now just leave him alone, and so that's what I did. And then I got another phone call from him last October, and he said, you're going to be in Sacramento speaking in November, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, I said, how do you know that? And he said, well, it's on an AA flyer up here. And he said, Karen, I've been sober for almost a year in AA, and I have a sponsor. And I thought, oh, wow, and I'm not taking credit for that, you guys. I had nothing to do with it except basically give him a phone number and stuff. But how nice. And the best part of it is that I wish him well, you guys. I wish my ex-husband well. And that is a lot of growth for me, I got to tell you. And he told me, he says, can I come to that talk? And I said, well, I don't care. I can't keep you out of an AA meeting. And he said, are you going to tell that story about me? And I said, yeah, and I'm going to say, and there he is right there in that chair, But he chose not to come to the talk that night, so anyway. But anyway, I'm glad that he's sober and stuff. But anyway, I divorced this man one more time. And you guys, I got involved with the most bizarre man I've ever met before in my life. This guy told me he was in the mafia. Now, I don't think anybody in Lincoln, Nebraska is in the mafia, for Christ's sakes. And I was lying to him, and he was lying to me. It was your typical alcoholic nightmare is what it was. I was drinking on a daily basis. I was taking Valium for severe tremors I was starting to have. It was beginning to be no more fun to do, but I got to tell you guys, I'm a nurse and I've studied alcoholism, and I knew all about it before I became one. And it shows me one more time tonight that self-knowledge does not mean a damn thing with this disease. It's action that counts. Nowhere in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous do we have a chapter called Into Thinking, but we do have one that's called Into Action, and that is the only reason I'm standing here 13 years sober, I got to tell you. And anyway, the day came to me at the hospital, told me, we have had all the crap we're going to take off of you. We cannot read about our nursing staff in the paper anymore. Gluing husbands, drunk driving charges, bad checks, all the stuff that you're doing. Everything you do in Nebraska is in the paper, I'm sorry to say. And they knew my game, let me tell you. And they said, you're either going to a treatment center, you no longer have this job. Well, you guys, you don't tell people like me that stuff. And I said, you and what army's going to make me go to a treatment center? And I walked out of a job that I loved more than in the whole world, and I cannot say that enough tonight. And I drank and I drank and I died 1,000 times over. I went to work at a nursing home there in Lincoln, and what I'm about ready to tell you guys is something I am not proud to discuss from any AA podium. It took me years in my sobriety before I would ever mention this. I found myself stealing drugs in that nursing home. I was stealing morphine and Demerol and cocaine and Valium I could get my damn hands on. And if you think I'm proud of that, you were sadly mistaken. And the day came to me, the people that ran that place came up to me, and they said, Karen, what is wrong with you? You are just weird is what you are. I remember thinking to myself, you'd be weird too if you had 200 milligrams of Demerol on board. You'd be weird too. And I threw my narcotic keys at them, and I walked out the door before they fired me. And I went to work at Bryan Memorial Hospital there in Lincoln. And you guys, it's a fine, fine facility. And I was drunk on that interview, and I got that nursing position. And I'm not talking about falling down drunk. I was just maintaining a certain level in my bloodstream that I would not shake and have those violent tremors. That is clearly desperation drinking. Our book describes it vividly. And I was in hot water up to my yin-yang, let me tell you. I had to drink, I had to take drugs, and I had no more choice than any of it. And I will tell you guys right up front here tonight, the very thought that I might drink again makes the hair on my neck stand straight up, I got to tell you. And that's why I'm an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got to tell you. And anyway, I kept that job for a short amount of time, doing the same things I was doing at that nursing home, stealing drugs, justifying in my head, I don't mean to do this, I'm not a bad person, this is a temporary thing, I'm never going to do it again. Well, if that never happens for us, we just jump from the fat to the fire. And the day came to me when I got caught red-handed stealing some morphine from that hospital, and this has got to be without a doubt the most humiliating day of my entire life. When they said, you give us your narcotic keys and you get out of this hospital and don't you ever walk back in here again. We're reporting this to the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they should have done. My other two jobs should have done it too, as a matter of fact. And to make a long story short from here tonight, I lost my nursing license. I threw the one thing that I loved more than anything in the whole world right down the toilet so I could drink. And that is total insanity. It's also called alcoholism. And to make a long story short and short from here tonight, I wound up on the streets of Nebraska is what happened to me. And you guys, I spent 2 years on the streets. And I have traveled over the Midwest. I prostituted myself. And I'll guarantee you one thing, that I have seen and done things that no woman should ever see or do. And I'm still so sick in the head sometimes I think to myself, I wouldn't mind seeing some of them again, you know. And my sponsor assures me I'm still a very ill person to be thinking that kind of crap. And, you know, I've been in nut houses, I've been in detoxes, I've been in jails, I've been in institutions. I cannot think of a thing that would have me. And those streets as a practicing female alcoholic. And I hated myself so bad I cannot begin to tell you guys. And 2 years went by for me. And there I was back there in Lincoln. standing on Skid Row sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And I certainly had better things intended for myself than to be doing that, I got to tell you. I will never forget that last day of my drinking as long as I live, and I hope to God it was the last day of my drinking. I apparently was so physically sick I just passed out on the streets is what happened to me. But before that happened, I remember thinking to myself, there was a Hilton Hotel adjacent to that Skid Row area, and I remember thinking 2 years ago I used to stand on top of the Hilton Hotel and drink martinis with surgeons. What am I doing standing on Skid Row drinking with these people? And I rather imagine they felt the same way when they arrived there, and I can't tell you much about it at all. I woke up in an intensive care ward at the very hospital that I was born at, the very hospital that I worked at for 19 years, and I will tell you guys clearly that the alcoholic hell for me started the day I got sober. I don't know how many people in this room tonight have been through withdrawal, but I can tell you it's not a pleasant experience, and I'm not a very big person. I was coming off a quart or whatever a day and 200 milligrams of Valium a day, and that is a lot of booze, that is a lot of pills, and I had a lot of dying to do. And I was laying in that intensive care ward. I had tubes coming out of my belly. They were draining fluid off my liver. I had IVs going, and I just wanted to die is what I wanted to do. And I found myself in withdrawal that was so bad I cannot begin to tell you guys how bad it was. And I laid in that intensive care ward, and I shook and I shook, and I died for 30 solid days. And I would scream at those nurses and say, you get me some Librium, you get me some Valium, you get me something. This is absolutely inhumane. It makes you have to go through this kind of withdrawal. And they said, Karen, listen to us. You need to fill every one of those tremors and maybe you'll never do it again. I went to a fine facility, guys. They knew exactly what they were doing with alcoholics. And they went on to tell me there's nothing wrong with your heart. It's not throwing any irregularities. You need to fill every one of those tremors and maybe you'll never do it again. And I did not want to hear that, let me tell you. But let me tell you what these people did for me. And I will be forever grateful as long as I am sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. They got about 10 people from AA to come and sit with me. And these people never left me day or night for 30 solid days. It was your original 12-step call, let me tell you. And I literally fell in love with these members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll tell you why. There was nobody in my life the day I got sober. My family wanted nothing to do with me. They've been through it too many times. They were going to go through it one more time. My mom, who I love very, very much, you guys, had to be hospitalized because of me and put on tranquilizers. My mom did not deserve that by a long shot, let me tell you. And I had not forgotten that as I stand here tonight. And although my mother is dead, I have to make constant living amends to that woman for that. And I think I can do that by being a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so anyway, I fell in love with these people. And I'd say to them, when is this withdrawal going to stop? And they said, when it's time, that's when it's going to stop. And that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted a date is what I wanted. And they couldn't give me a date. And they were absolutely accurate about that. And at 30 days of sobriety, I walked into the official treatment program at that hospital. I'm a product of a treatment center. I have no opinion on one way or the other. But apparently I went to a fine one because all they talked about was Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a lot of bad ones out there, you guys, let me tell you. And thank God I went to a good one. And let me tell you what I was like when I was 30 days sober. I turned on you like you could not even believe when you started telling me what to do. I needed you so desperately on day one, but 30 days there was a whole different ball game, I got to tell you. And I walked into group therapy for the first time. There was 14 men in that group. They were all younger than I was, in there for joint driving charges and stuff like that. I couldn't identify with these people. I'd done those things years prior to my alcoholism. And this one guy looked at me and he said, you think you're better than everybody else here, don't you? And I made a comment to this man that I would not pay, that I would not repeat from this podium tonight. And as a direct result of that comment, I found myself in an inpatient 30-day program for 7 months, you guys. And that is a long time to be an inpatient 30-day program. And I completed that program, and I went to an outpatient program, I went to an evening care program, and I went to an aftercare program. And I found myself a very, very active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in Lincoln. And I wasn't doing one thing that way you teach people in AA to do it. I would tell the new people, you don't need to read the book, and you don't need to sponsor. We can do what the hell we want to do around here. This is an individual program. And needless to say, I was not real popular with the old-timers in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I rapidly went through 19 sponsors in that town. And you guys, the old-timers in AA are so precious to me as I stand up here tonight. But not in 1982. I could have cared less one way that these people thought. And you can pull your crap in just for so long. And these old-timers are going to start nailing you one right after the other. God love the mean old-timers in Alcoholics Anonymous. They literally saved my life. And although I did not feel that way in 1982, I got to tell you. And this old guy with 29 years of sobriety grabbed me out of an AA meeting one day. And he said, come outside, I want to talk to you. You stay away from the new people. How dare you tell the new people in AA they don't need to read the book and they don't need a sponsor? He said, you're like a typhoid Mary in AA. Everybody dies around you, but you're able to stay sober somehow. He said, you stay away from the new people. And he went on to tell me, there's going to be a man from California speaking in Kearney, Nebraska this weekend. His name is Clancy. You're up and hear this man speak and ask this man if he will sponsor you. He is a master dealing with jerks like you. And I heard all about Clancy, and I wanted nothing to do with him, period, because I knew I was going to be in bad, bad trouble. And I got to tell you guys that my fears have been justified 8,000 times over. And I told this old timer, I said, who the hell do you think you are that you're going to tell me he's going to be my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous? He said, if you don't get in that car and go with us Saturday, I'm going to tell everybody in Lincoln how you stole money from an AA meeting. And I'll guarantee I was in that car going to Kearney, Nebraska. And I paid that money back too, by the way. And I got to tell you guys that from a podium in Kearney, Nebraska, that Clancy literally, and I mean literally, put the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous into my life. And my life has never been the same since that talk. And there's a reason for that. For the first time in my sobriety, I was identifying with another alcoholic. And as I understand Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what this thing is all about. I know of no finer speaker in the world than my sponsor. I'm not saying that you need to believe that. It's only important that I believe that. That is how God works in Karen's life. I never would have asked that man to sponsor me in a million years. Trust me on that, I would not have asked him. And I found myself walking across that convention floor and asking him to be my sponsor. And he said, I don't sponsor crazy people like you. And that's a lie anyway. He sponsors people crazier than I ever thought of being. And I thought to myself, why did he say that to me? He doesn't even know me. And I was standing in my little white dress on, my little white gloves on, acting like an angel. And he saw right through my crap, I got to tell you. And I wasn't aware of the fact that these old-timers had called him 2 weeks prior to him coming to Nebraska and asked me if they brought me if he would talk to me. He said, of course I will. And he knew my game, let me tell you. And he said, Karen, I don't like to sponsor people on a long-distance basis, but I'm going to do this for you, because if I don't do it for you, you're probably going to go die somewhere. But he said, I'm going to tell you something, little girl, and you better listen to me real good, because I'm going to say it one time and one time only. You're going to call me, did I tell you not to call me every day? You're going to read that book. You're going to sponsor people. You're going to become an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're not going to argue with me. You're not going to defend your actions to me. You're going to do what I ask you to do. If you want to do that, then get yourself a different sponsor. And you guys, you want to talk about we stood at the turning point. This is the day when my recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous really did begin. And I said 2 words that I almost fell over when I said them. I said, yes, sir. One more time, God working in Karen's life. I never would have told that man, yes, sir, in a million years. Trust me on that, I would not have. And I went back to Lincoln. I became very, very active in AA in the right way. I went up by sponsoring a lot of women in that town. I'm not bragging about that. It's not that much fun to sponsor 56 crazy women in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, you guys, speaking of the women I sponsor the most beautiful, gorgeous women in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you all to meet Patty. Patty came over here with me tonight. And Patty just moved here from Columbia, Missouri to be with her sponsor. And her husband is sponsored by my sponsor. And we're so glad that they're part of our family and stuff. And she has literally fallen in love with Southern California AA, I got to tell you. And I'm so glad she's here with me tonight and stuff. And I know what she feels like. I fell in love with it too. But anyway, you know, Clancy became my sponsor. And one of the first directions he told me, I want you to get that nursing license back. And I tried to tell this man, I cannot go with that kind of humiliation. He said, quit arguing with me and get up to the State Board of Nursing Nebraska. Tell those people that you've been sober in AA for a year and a half. You'd like the opportunity to get your nursing license back. And you guys, I knew it wasn't going to work, but I did it anyway. And that's without a doubt the most important thing I can say in this room tonight. I did what my sponsor asked me to do, whether I thought it would work or not. And I went up there and asked them for my license back. And they looked at me like I had just grown horns on the top of my head, I got to tell you. And they said, how many links are you willing to go to? And I had to do a lot, you guys. I had to take crap off people for 2 years that I wouldn't hire to mow my own lawn, if you want to know the truth. And I had to keep my mouth shut in the process. And one of the happiest days of my life occurred about 8.5 years ago, when one more time I was jerked in front of the State Board of Nursing Nebraska. And what they told me brought me to my knees for the first time in Alcoholics Anonymous. They said, welcome home. You're fully reinstated as a registered nurse. And that is a gift from AA. I do not deserve that, but I intend to take it. I can tell you that. And I came out here to visit a couple times. I fell in love with Southern California AA. If you're in this room tonight, I want you to know that you are in the mecca of Alcoholics Anonymous in the whole world. This is the best place to be and be sober. I know that's true because I get the honor of speaking all over the world. And I welcome you. I hope that you stand. I told my sponsor on the phone one day, I want to move to Los Angeles. I want to live on that crazy Venice Beach with all those crazy people. I knew I'd feel like a glove, and I've not been wrong about that either. I want to belong to the Pacific Group. I want to work at UCLA in the operating room. I want to be on 2 of their transplant teams, their heart and liver transplant teams. I want this and I want that. And every single one of those things have come true for me. And those are all gifts from AA. Like I said, I do not deserve, but I intend to take it, I can tell you. And, you know, people say to me all the time, why do you keep doing it, Karen? Why do you keep doing it? And I know of no greater thing to say to them than what our 12th tradition says, long form, so that this to the end, that my great blessings may never spoil me, that I may forever live in thankful contemplation of him who presides over us all. And there's more reasons than that for me. You're the ones that walked me when nobody else would walk with me. You held my hand when nobody else would hold my hand. And you told me that you loved me. And I need you as desperately tonight as I needed you in 1982. You've taught me how to live. You've taught me how to love. You've taught me how to keep my pants up and all those things. And I don't do any of those things very well. But I'll tell you the one thing that I do with 200% absolute perfection, and that is this, that I love you more than the whole world. And it's truly a story from an alcoholic hell I cannot even describe. I have truly been given, just like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, I have truly been given the keys to the kingdom. And I'm going to say one more thing and I'm going to sit down here. It has been one hell of a walk from Skid Row in Nebraska to where I stand tonight in Los Angeles, California. And I think that but for the grace of God in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I would have missed it all. Thank you for having me and thank you for my life.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.